let's go back into your story a little bit. You've been on YouTube for quite a while, so used to kind of creating content, but it sounded like even though you were doing an amazing thing with your family by homesteading and doing a lot of homeschooling and that kind of thing, that you were, suffering. You mentioned the mental health and everything. Tell us about your story and how you got to be into such a bad place with your health.
Yeah, for many, many years, I was suffering horribly. The worst for me was depression and anxiety. That's the reason I'm so passionate in doing this documentary, frankly, is only because of mental health issues. But I went through horrible depression for about 15 years before finding carnivore and a proper human diet. And I was on every medication, every SSRI. Just for people that aren't depressed, it's sometimes hard for people to understand like how deep that goes. I was suicidally depressed, hopelessly depressed, like the literal definition of hopelessness. Like, I don't know how I'm going to make it through this day. Every single day, it turned into insomnia, horrible anxiety. And a lot of times people will try to deal with those things themselves. And I did that for many years. And it got so bad that my wife finally intervened and took me to get help. And I got medication. But sadly, the medication never helped me. They're like, we can give you this SSRI for your depression. It's going to take 3 months before we know if it works or not. And but you got to stick to it. And you got to do it for 3 months. I'm like, oh my goodness, I need help now, not 3 months from now. But I had no choice. So I did it for 3 months and it didn't do anything. And then they're like, okay, well, we'll just up the dosage and you'll have to try for another 3 months. And I did that for another 3 months. And before you knew it, a year went by on one medication, still hopelessly depressed, just feeling like a shadow of myself. And then I went on to, they're like, well, let's try another medication. So I did that for years and years. Besides the mental health issues, though, my physical health just deteriorated worse and worse and worse. I had IBS for many years. I was diagnosed with IBS. My stomach always hurt, was always gurgling and bubbling and just never felt right. Uh, I had skin cancer on my ear several years ago. I had my gallbladder removed because my stomach was hurting so bad. I went in and they're like, your gallbladder is okay. It's kind of borderline. Maybe this will help with your IBS and your stomach issues. So I'm like, take it out. Like, I'm desperate, anything. I've had multiple kidney stones. My appendix burst on the operating room table. It almost killed me if I wasn't going in for the operation when it happened to burst, like just as they were ready to do the surgery. I believe all of these things I'm talking about, by the way, too, were from nutrition. I snored most of my life. I had a CPAP machine. I went in for several sleep studies. The biggest thing for me was about 7 years ago, I was at home and I went to stand up and I got very dizzy and the side of my face went numb. My fingers were tingling. I got confused. I couldn't find my words. My wife panicked and called 911. And I had a TIA mini stroke. I ended up spending 5 days in the hospital. And they're like, what? This guy is like in his 30s. Why is he having a mini stroke? Why is he having all these health issues? Of course, they looked at all my records. It was like, my records are just huge with all these health issues. So they did all of these tests on me and they determined I had congestive heart failure. I have a low ejection fraction, which means my heart can't keep up with the needs of my body. My ejection fraction was a 44. So I just had this cascade of health issues, one after the other after the other. On top of all of that, I was diagnosed with gout, but then the next doctor said, maybe it's not gout, it's just inflammation. Well, whatever it was just this horrible pain in my right foot on my second toe. And it hurt so bad, I was in crutches. It hurt so bad that for about a year and a half, when I would go to like a grocery store or anywhere big, I'd ride around on a mobility scooter because I couldn't put any pressure down. It literally felt like a fractured bone. And yeah, many, many, many health issues. And so I found Carnivore Diet through a YouTube video from Dante Ferrigno. It was so inspiring. The guy had IBS, depression, overweight, lots of things like me. And he was talking about eating meat only. And I'm like, that's absolutely insane. That's nuts. On the flip side, I knew about keto because I had some success with keto throughout the years. I found keto years ago. It's the only thing that touched my depression, but it never got rid of my depression. And I could never maintain it. I would yo-yo, but it helped a little bit. So when Dante was talking about this, I'm like, from a science perspective, this makes sense. He's going to be in deep ketosis. Of course, it's going to help his body. But I'm like, there's no way you can just eat only meat. You're going to clog your arteries. I have congestive heart failure. I can't eat only meat. I'll have a heart attack. So all of these things. And then I started watching Dr. Berry videos. And I kid you not, I probably watched 1,000 Dr. Berry videos, and I saw the one on type 2 diabetes where people are like, "You saved my life, Dr. Berry. This was my A1C before and after." Because in my head, Casey, I'm like, what is he selling? Like, he's going to say you got to pay $1,000 for my diet program, or they're going to be the Dr. Berry supplements. And I got to the end of 1,000 videos and I'm like, he's not even selling anything. He's just saying, just go eat meat. And then I saw that video with all those comments, and in my head still, I'm like, Dr. Berry's a fraud. He's faking it. And I'm like, wait, so 2,000 comments, he had all of these faked as well. People saying like their lives was saved. They reversed their A1C, their diabetes is gone now. So that's what ultimately convinced me 500 plus days ago to start Carnivore. And yeah, it's changed my life in profound ways ever since, and pretty quickly too.
That's so amazing. Yeah. So how did you start the diet?
Yeah, so even though all of that, I saw Dr. Berry, I saw all of this, still in my head, I'm like, this is nuts. This is crazy. You can't only eat meat. I told myself for 30 days, I'm just going to do an elimination diet. I'm going to eliminate sugar, carbs, seed oils, grains, toxins, things that humans were never intended to eat. Well, ultimately, Casey, I was telling myself I'm just going to eat meat, but I rephrased it, and that helped me wrap my brain around it, and I was able to do it that way. And after I started doing it, it wasn't, but well, here's the first thing that happened that was just insane to me. I stopped snoring almost immediately. And I've been to 2 sleep studies. I had a CPAP machine. And so I'm wearing this mask strapped around my face for years. And I hated that thing. And I stopped snoring. My wife woke me up. She's like, "You didn't snore last night." And because this was a contentious thing, because I really snored loudly. I would snore and then I'd stop breathing with the sleep apnea. So my poor wife is like, "Are you dead?" And she'd like shake me awake over and over again. So she was always conscious of my sleep. I shortly after I stopped snoring, like right away on Carnivore, it was amazing to me because my sleep doctor told me, "Listen, dude, you're like at that point you're 80 pounds overweight. You have to lose weight." My neck was huge too, so I'm like, this is just I'm snoring because I'm fat. It wasn't true. I was snoring 100% from inflammation. I didn't lose a pound on Carnivore, and I stopped snoring. And then I heard Dr. Jordan Peterson on Joe Rogan say the exact same thing. He said the first week on Carnivore, he stopped snoring. And then I started doing more research. I heard more and more people say this, and I was kind of mad because my depression, when I could get my sleep under control over the 15 years of depression I had, it was very rare. But whenever I got really good sleep, I would notice sort of a cause and effect with the depression. It touched the depression a little bit. Sleep is a huge component to everything in your life, mental health being a big one. So when I was able to get that sleep under control so quickly, I was like, whoa, this is pretty powerful. And I just started eating meat. My first meal was steak and shrimp, and then I had bacon and eggs the next day and lots of burger patties that first week. Around day 8, the other reason my motivation was my daughter. My daughter Lily, she was 18 at the time. She had open heart surgery at 13. She has had a cascade of health issues similar to her father. She almost died of blood clots right during the big pandemic. And it wasn't related to that. It was something else. It was medication she was on that in retrospect, she never should have been on. She was on that medication. It was just her nutrition the whole time. But long story short, Lily, my daughter, had this skin condition called HS. It looks like acne. It was all over her chest and back, and it was incredibly painful. Like she'd come to us crying, this hurt so bad. She suffered from this for 5 years. The girl was through open heart surgery, 2 blood clots that almost killed her, and this was her biggest problem, this HS. My wife and I were doing everything. We took her to dermatologists all over our state. We spent a bunch of money, like, let's go to the best specialist. And creams, pills, medications, injections were the only suggestions. We tried all of them. None of them worked. And at one point, Lily said to me, "I just want to die. This hurts so bad. And these doctors aren't doing anything. What are we going to go to the 6th doctor now?" And the last doctor wanted to do an injection that was going to shut down her whole immune system. And I'm like, no, this is crazy. The last 5 doctor suggestions didn't work, and we're not going to shut down her immune system. So part of my reason for doing this Carnivore too was I'm like, this could maybe help Lily. I learned about Jordan Peterson and then his daughter, Michaela Peterson, and she totally reminded me of my daughter, Lily. So I said to my daughter on day 8, I'm like, this is incredible, Lily. I stopped snoring. My mood is improving. Like I feel so much better. And I'm just 8 days in this Carnivore thing. You're 18, you can do whatever you want. But I really think now that I'm seeing a little more clearly, your HS is just from the foods you're eating. in my head, it was always like, oh, this is genetic. This is just some fluke she has. I'm like, no, this is the foods you're eating. Why don't you try carnivore with me? She did. And 8 days into her journey, half of her back cleared up. And by day 30 of her doing carnivore, all of her HS was completely 100% gone. It was
Wow.
like miraculous to me. And it was so important to me, so life-changing for me, because when we have children as parents, obviously we do anything for our kids, but to see that healing after seeing my daughter suffer for so long was so powerful. And then, yeah, during my 30 days too, not to skip over too much, so many other things changed. My anxiety started going away. The sleep improved right away. My stomach issues started clearing up. I started feeling like lighter. And by the end of the 30 days, I was like, I don't feel my stomach anymore. Like, what is this? There was always this heaviness or something there. And I'm like, I don't have a stomach anymore, I guess. It's just, it's so light. And you get used to this old new normal. My back always hurt. I thought I injured it in high school. My back's always going to hurt. I'm always going to have this heaviness in my stomach. I'm always going to have this brain fog. And I'm sorry, I get fired up. The last thing I'll say is the brain fog going away was incredible. I knew I had brain fog before, but you can't see the fog while you're in the fog. And when I got out of that fog, I was like, this is incredible. I can think clearly. I can find my words. I can read a book. I can comprehend things. My wife and I watch Jeopardy every day. And I announced this on my 30-day video, but it was kind of a good test because I've been doing that for years. I was like killing it on Jeopardy afterwards. I'm like, I didn't get smarter from eating meat, but I was able to retrieve things that were deeper in my brain that I wasn't able to before because I was in such a fatigued, stupor brain fog all of my life that had become normal. And so I started realizing this new normal, like this is what it feels like to just be a proper human. And I was just dampening it this whole time by putting all this garbage into my body.